So I was a complete beginner, and this was in 2016. I only did maybe 3 or 4 lessons with someone, and then I
Mhm.
stopped for a year. And the thing is, this is reality. I wanted to explain this as well. It's not all, oh, you just start learning and everything goes smooth and Alhamdulillah, like you're fluent, especially if you living in the West, you're working full time, you have your career, you have all your different goals as well. So
Mhm.
I started, you're gonna have stop starts. You're gonna have times where you're able to do 3, 4 lessons a week. Then you're gonna have times where you can only do maybe less than that.
Yeah, it would take 6 months just to reach this level. Like you are on the threshold of being fluent in a language, and you can talk about normal things. 6 months is good. It's a good. It gives you a good start to be able to address yourself.
So you might have to go through a few teachers to find which one is best for you, you know? Because
Hmm.
sometimes the teacher might be the best, like this teacher might be seen as like a professor or something, but it depends on your styles and personality. You
Hmm.
might not click. So there's no harm in having taste the lessons, seeing which one you feel comfortable with, going with that one.
Hmm.
Sometimes I feel like, where people try to be too nice, like they've had a lesson with someone and then they don't want to disappoint them. So they're like,
Uh-huh.
oh, I've got a lesson with, if they don't get on. Assalamu alaikum all, and welcome to another episode of the Optimized Muslim podcast interview series. Today, inshallah, I'm going to be interviewing Mohammed Hafez, who's from Egypt, and he's been my Arabic tutor for the last year or so. And I wanted to ask him some questions from a beginner perspective so that it helps you on your own journeys. I know a lot of us have this hope or desire to one day be able to speak and understand Arabic. So I think it'll help you with regards to the best way to start on this journey, some helpful tips, some time saving tips. Um, you can benefit from my experience. I went about learning Arabic a particular way for the first couple of years, and now with hindsight, I've learned a lot of things that I think I can share that will help cut down the time that it will take for others to learn. Obviously, we all have our own theories and stuff, and what's the best way to learn, and different teaching methods and different learning techniques as well. But I think it's best to ask someone who's a proper tutor who spends hours per day teaching people as to what the best methods are, what he sees. And also, he spends a lot of time teaching people from the West, people who aren't studying full time, people like ourselves. We might be working Arabic, we try to fit it in wherever we can. So that's a unique perspective. You're going to get different answers to asking someone who's accustomed to teaching in a full-time institution. So that's the reason why I wanted to interview Mohammed Hafez today. He's also a very nice person. I enjoy studying with him. He's like a friend. We just discuss life, different topics, and I found it very beneficial studying with him. So that's why I wanted to interview him. So this video forms part of a series I wanted to do on learning Arabic, because I know it's one of the key topics that a lot of Muslims in the West who are practicing and want to kind of level up, increase their connection with the Deen and the Quran. They want to start this journey, but sometimes they're left struggling to fit it in, or it's just they don't actually take the action. So I wanted to make a series of videos that show how easy it is to kind of eliminate any excuses, so that it kind of inspires and propels you to take that first step. So, inshallah, without further ado, enjoy this interview with Muhammad Hafez. And if you do benefit, like, share, and subscribe. Jazakallah khairan, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. When I'm interviewing someone that I know or I've spoken to a bit before,
Hmm.
it feels a bit different. I sometimes start laughing, at the start,
I understand. Yeah, I
because we're
understand.
used to just talking normally. But
Hmm.
anyway, there's more of just like a discussion. So, um,
Hmm.
Assalamu alaikum, brother Muhammad Hafez. How are you?
Alaikum salam. I'm all good. And how are you?
Alhamdulillah. So, like I was saying, I've already introduced the topic, I've already introduced the podcast. I wanted to just give people who are looking to start learning Arabic A lot of Muslims, especially in the West, practicing Muslims, they have this desire, they have this hope
Mm-hmm.
that one day we want to study Arabic, or not study. They don't have the hope of studying, they have the hope of just knowing Arabic, you know, being able to
Mm-hmm.
speak, being able to listen. So I would say a high percentage of Muslims have this, but not many of them do it. Not many of them take that practical steps. So I wanted to have this interview with you, someone who's experienced as a teacher, to ask these questions that a lot of people have, and it applies to people who are looking to start Arabic, and also applies to those who are already studying, because maybe we can give them some tips to save time, so that they're not spending a lot of time using techniques that don't work. So that's the kind of topic, inshallah, and more just a discussion. So I wanted to start by asking you, how long have you been teaching Arabic?
I've started teaching Arabic since 2016, so now it's quite 5 years.
No. And you teach a lot of, another positive of having you as a guest is it's different if you ask a teacher who works in a full-time institution.
Mm-hmm.
Their advice and their tips and their approach to teaching is going to be different to someone who is used to or has experience in teaching people who, like me, they can't study full time because they might
Mm-hmm.
have jobs, and people in the West, you have to find time. So their tips are going to be different, because if you ask someone maybe who's a full-time institution or university teacher, they might focus a lot more on grammar, and they have a different approach to teaching. Whereas with you, because you're teaching people um, like living in the West who aren't in a position to study full time, you have that unique insight into the best way of, from your experience, of how to study Arabic. So just to start off with, I wanted to ask you, say if there's someone who comes to you as a beginner,
Mm-hmm.
um, let's say they can read Arabic,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of Muslims in the UK, they go through the masjid system. They can read Arabic, and they can read it quite well, a lot of them. But
Mm-hmm.
obviously they can't understand anything. So let's say they have the alphabet, but other than that, a completely fresh slate. They want to ask you your best way of learning. They don't have any preference. They just say 100% control. I want you to teach me the best way to learn Arabic. What would you say?
It's quite typical. I have got these requests a lot,
Um,
and it's actually a great advantage, as if you learn how to read and write, you can learn by yourself. You can do a lot of things alone, to study, to acquire more words, to maybe get to know grammatical structures. So, that being said, once I deal with some students who have no idea about Arabic, you need to spend a fair amount of time just to get to know, familiarize them with the vocabulary. Many people, especially with the same criteria you have described, already know how to read. Sometimes they read with recitation, which is quite not what we want, because you want to speak Arabic,
no,
not really recite
with tajweed.
with tajweed and everything. That is like a bit of extra. You don't
Yeah.
need to run this mile when you speak and read normal Arabic.
Mhm.
I will start to tell them you need to speak. What
No.
they lack is practice.
Yes.
And they are complete beginners, but you can easily jump from complete beginner to an elementary level with quite a few amount of words and a few grammatical rules. That's what
Mm.
you need to start with. Basically, you start to get to know first the grammatical structure of how to form a sentence. That's very important. Without it, you just say words and wouldn't give the complete meaning you want to convey. Then you start to know basic words and practice them. One of major problems learning Arabic compared to other languages is the lack of resources. You cannot find as many as resources in German, in French. In Arabic, it's quite what you look for is quite narrow.
Okay,
Uh,
so just to make the question a bit easier, first of all, I want to say it feels different hearing you speak in English, because normally, obviously, with I'm trying to speak, I can't say I'm speaking Arabic, but normally I'm trying to speak Arabic. So but mashallah, you have good English as well. I didn't realize that much before.
Thank you.
But anyway, so let's say this person, they have 1 hour per week to start off with.
Mhm, mhm,
But that's good advice. So basically, you're saying the focus should be on the basics of learning how to construct and form a sentence. Once you've
mhm,
got that, and then slowly building up your vocabulary. Because I had an interview with one of my friends on this podcast last year. I think I
mhm,
mentioned it to him. I mentioned it to you once before as well, where he studied in an institute in the UK. So, but that's a bit of a more of a. I think that applies to less people, because less people are going to be willing to do that. I think he was a bit of a unique case, because he studied in an institute where they studied maybe 3 hours a week,
mhm,
but they were paired with people, practice with, and mashallah, he managed to become fluent very quick. Within a year, he could speak. And the thing with that whole podcast was, I was recommending that if you do that, if you fully immerse yourself,
mhm,
you can do it fast. But I don't think many people, say even the people that want to learn Arabic, they might be willing to start learning online, but even less are going to be willing to find the institute, join it, because it depends where you live, if you've got physical proximity to the place and whatnot. Um, so here's my follow-up question to that is, I think a time-saving thing, how familiar here, when I started with Al Arabiya Bayna Yadayk,
mhm,
because I found some playlists on YouTube,
mhm,
which I might link in the description, because it can be of benefit to people. So I was a complete beginner, and this was in 2016. I only did maybe 3 or 4 lessons with someone, and then I
mhm,
stopped for a year. And the thing is, this is reality. I wanted to explain this as well. It's not all, oh, you just start learning and everything goes smooth and alhamdulillah, like you're fluent, especially if you living in the West, you're working full time, you have your career, you have all your different goals as well. So
mhm,
you're going to have stop starts. You're going to have times where you're able to do 3, 4 lessons a week. Then you're going to have times where you can only do maybe less than that. So and then I started consistently with the Al Arabiya Bayna Yadayk, using the YouTube playlist. The benefit of that is I could do it whenever I had time. You
mhm,
don't get the accountability of a tutor, but it's reliable, meaning I can access it whenever I wanted. But I spent a year doing book one, Al Arabiya Bayna
mhm,
Yadayk. So it gave me some fundamentals, some vocab, but and then I spent another year trying to do book two, but it was more
mhm,
difficult and more on off. So then when something's difficult, you feel more discouraged and you stop focusing it on it as much. But the whole thing is, once I started doing more lessons with you, um, focused on speaking, what I realized is I should have done this before. So maybe I can't say I wasted 2 years, but like, this is the purpose of the podcast. If I was advising someone in my position, and the negative was I wasn't with anyone studying. If I
mhm,
had a group of people I was studying with, you could share ideas. They could say, don't do this, do that. If you're studying on your own, you're just going by your own experience. So my advice would be, and if you agree with this as well, just focus on the speaking. Like get your basics, but even that, do it using someone that you're speaking with, because that's the main step. Once you get comfortable in, you get through that struggle of trying to speak. It's a lot
Mhm.
better than focusing on trying to learn the, because in Al Arabiya Bayna Yadayk, they have quite a lot of grammar in there. I don't think you really need it depending on your purpose. Would you agree with that?
I completely agree with that. You can also add, you can have tons of books. You cannot learn a language by reading and studying from a book. That's a complete different studying and learning techniques. You have to hear a lot. You have to speak a lot. Yeah, of course you have to read and write, but let's have some priorities. You speak is much more important, especially at the beginning, than your ability to read. And if you want to read something to help you to illuminate your mind, it wouldn't be that easy language. Uh, I would say it's not a bad idea to start with books and try to have some self-learning experience, and
Mm,
especially if you don't have time, and some people maybe don't have enough resources to
mm.
hire a teacher.
True,
So
that's a
it's
good
not
point.
it's not a complete bad idea, and there's no knowledge that can be in vain or vain. So
MashaAllah.
yeah, it is a good thing to do, but it needs, from my experience, to be accompanied with someone to just guide you. There are a lot of things you find in books that you wouldn't need much in real life.
Mm,
And let's Arabic has kind of a specialty. It's kind of unique. It's a language that has been here for over thousands of years. Grammatical structure hasn't changed much, but the language itself has it changed. Vocabulary has it changed a lot. And I have one book. It's a collection of short stories. And from the first sight, it's a very good resource. You listen to a story, you read it, but this look has a very old Arabic style. Vocabulary there is obsolete. And uh, I just felt very bad about the person who would use it, who would start to study a lot of words he would never see in his life.
mm,
So yes, you have to be smart
mm,
with a language. Once you tackle a language, it's like most of people start a language like a whim. They want to know, wow, what is this? What is Arabic? What they do there? Or stuff like that, which is not a
mm,
bad idea. You start to gather information needed for future. Once
mm.
you find your true motive,
Yes,
which would drive you to exert a lot of effort and
yes.
do this not easy feat. Learning a language is never easy. It takes a lot of dedication, it takes a lot of time, but it's worth it at the end. Once
Mm,
you are able to speak with ease, you can express yourself, you discover a new different world,
mm,
and you have more possibilities, career possibilities. You can educate yourself in a different way. You can
mm.
communicate with people you are not used to talk with, and many more possibilities.
Yeah. And also, I feel like, alhamdulillah, like language is, I once heard that the language gives you a new lens through which
Hmm.
to view a culture. And I feel like maybe when you're learning a new language, that's difficult to understand, especially if you're at the beginner or like elementary level, like you said. But
Hmm.
the example I can give is, say, our native language, like Urdu or Punjabi, there's a complete difference. And recently I came across some videos on YouTube where there's some guy and he's learned Chinese or Japanese,
Hmm.
and he basically goes to Chinatown
Hmm.
and he starts speaking in fluent Mandarin, I think, with the shopkeepers. And basically, the whole interesting point behind the video, the reason why people watch it, is the reactions. because the moment he starts speaking Chinese and he's like a normal white American, the Chinese, they kind of light up, like you see their face and they're like, oh. And
Mhm.
I feel like that's the effect of language. You know, people say, oh, this is a global culture now, everyone speaks, but it's not, because look, people have been saying that for 50 years.
Mhm.
You still feel it, because say if I'm born here but I can speak fluently the mother language, whenever you speak to someone who's born from Pakistan, let's say, or the subcontinent area, if you can speak fluently, they understand that you have the same lens through which you're viewing the culture. It's not something you can get through just being able to speak in English. Do you understand? And I
Yeah,
feel like,
completely.
yes, and that's the point. Like, you have a completely different connection with that person. So linking it back to like Optimized Muslim Project is like, if one of your things is you want to do da'wah and you want to kind of invite people to deen, not just in like I say, da'wah 1.0, which is like telling people directly this is what we believe, but lifestyle da'wah, like
Mhm.
just so that people observe how you are, your different qualities and your
Mhm.
different, your lifestyle, and they become attracted to that. Part of that is developing a connection with people. So if you're able to understand the language and communicate in that way, it gives you a massive advantage, isn't it? And no.
Yes, and if you do dawah specifically for that, you need to touch people, you need to change a lot of their mindset and opinions. And I've read before, when you talk to someone's in his native language, you are talking directly to his heart.
No,
The impacts you would leave after talking to someone in his own language would be completely significant and huge compared to what you would do in another language, even if he can understand it. Once he's speaking another in his own language, you build some trust. He can trust you. He can think you see things from his
perspective.
uh, perspective.
No,
You are in his shoes.
no.
Uh, it's true. It's completely true.
And also,
Yeah.
it's basically humans, as much as people say, oh, we like difference and we like diversity, human
Hmm.
nature, just based on history, is people come together where there's similarity, because that's
Hmm.
the way humans have survived. You had to find something similar between you, whether that's
Hmm.
language, culture, whatever else, to make a tribe so that you can work together, achieve things,
Hmm.
create societies, right? So that element is always there. And I think especially the case with what you said is, for example, um, like these sayings, like you have Arabic sayings as well. Obviously,
Hmm.
I'm not at the level where I can understand them, but it gives you an insight into the culture. It's like if you're speaking to someone and then they have a particular saying that kind of encompasses that idea, and then they
Hmm.
say that saying, and it's like encapsulates what you're trying to say in many words. They can say it in maybe a few words, and that's one of the qualities of like the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and how obviously the companions, they used to be good with language, and at that time poetry, and it used to have an effect on people. But anyway, I think I slightly went off topic a little bit, but it's still
Hmm.
within the realm of language and the benefits. Hopefully this is like we're discussing the benefits of learning a language as well, other than um the main one which people want is like being able to, I think a lot of people say like, oh, imagine when you're standing in Taraweeh Salah, and
Hmm.
you hear the Quran and you can automatically, you understand what they're saying. That's one of the main reasons. But going back to the question is, so we said that obviously the best way of doing it is to try and focus on speaking, focus less on grammar at the start, build your vocabulary, and as much as you can afford it, try
Hmm.
and learn with somebody. And I also wanted to say it is quite relatively, it's quite cheap to do, right? Because look, you might be paying £5, £6, £7 an hour, but compared to everything else that we pay money for here in the UK, you have to look at your return on investment. So one problem that we have is people, they're willing to invest in £10,000 degrees, right? Whatever society has pushed them towards, they're willing to accept it. You know, this expense, Netflix, all the, you know, like people are easy. They might order a takeaway £20, £30 just without thinking. And then you think with that same amount of money, they could have had 5 lessons. So I know some people are going to say, oh, I can't afford lessons, which in that case, alhamdulillah, you have other resources. You can maybe follow the YouTube playlist, but you can still at least afford one a week, £6 a week using Italki, which I'll also direct. What I'm thinking of doing is make a separate video where I'm just going to say, okay, so you want to learn Arabic, this is how, and then I'm just gonna log on Italki, click, and show people how easy it is. You know, because then there's no excuse. What I find is part of the reason for this project is get rid of excuses. People love to make excuses. They might feel a bit uncomfortable, but what I'm trying to show is people generally, the way humans work, and this is myself as well. This isn't like, oh, we're like, we don't suffer from this. We all do it in the areas that we try. The first thing you think is, oh, this person learned it because he's like this. He's really smart. He's IQ 150, or he doesn't work, or you have some reason. Instead of that, you say, look, we work full time. Alhamdulillah, we have other goals. We do everything else. And we're still able to learn Arabic or try to learn it, right? Because you're getting rewarded on every step as well. You know, as you make effort. So you just have to make that initial step. And the main reason I wanted to focus on that is in this last year, alhamdulillah, out of the previous 2-3 years, the improvement I've had just with focusing on the speaking and studying with yourself is, alhamdulillah, like probably more than 100%. And the vocabulary is not improved that much. Maybe my way of learning has a little bit, but that's just because the emphasis on the speaking, and you have to go through that discomfort, you know, when you're struggling to speak. Like, I still get it when you have to keep remembering words, and it's like you can't even, you just want to quickly say it in English, you know. But anyway, let's get back to the questions. Is, say if someone has part-time, maybe 2-3 hours a week, how long, if they dedicate themselves, right, from straight beginner, how long do you think it can take them before, let's say, average intelligence, so no like superhuman, let's say, how long do you think it will take them to become conversational?
It depends whether his own language is close to Arabic or not, because that's a great advantage.
No.
If I'm working with a complete like English person, a normal English person with no other language besides English, it could be way more difficult compared to someone who speaks Turkish or Urdu or Farsi or whatever. It's quite easy. You can see the resemblance, and it helps. It's like a nice motivation while you are like learning this language. You come, I know this word. It's the same. It has a very positive impact in students. You see their eyes just glow when they see it. and
also it helps you remember as well, obviously, the word.
Of course. Yes. I would say with 2-3 hours, if you work smartly, if a person itself studies in a smart way, because people are different. Some people learn better by listening to things or reading to things, or just imitate. They are the best kind of students who can just imitate. It's a very good quality.
What do you mean? Something. What do you mean imitate? Like
imitate teacher, for example. I
Okay.
say something in some way, and some students, they are brilliant at that. That's quite impressive. I don't have this quality myself, but some people have. They would just focus on how you say it, and they just repeat it. Just by repeating a lot of things, they sound very eloquent somehow, even if their level is not as good as they are in reality. But how they address themselves gives them this kind of look. They, they
Yes,
speak very
yes,
well.
yes.
Sometimes it's even misleading because some
Mm,
people you see, you are speaking very, very well. Then you go deeper in the conversation. You can see, they are. It's not
yes.
as it looks, you know.
Because you just learn a few phrases, isn't it? Like a
Uh,
few easy. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yes. Okay, so let's say the person has a similar, because that is a good point you mentioned. If someone's not familiar with the Arabic at all, as in with
mhm,
the alphabet, like
mhm,
alif, ba, ta, then it's a completely different paradigm, completely different dimension.
mhm,
Let's say, okay, they're from a similar background, then Pakistani, or
mhm.
they have that connection. Um, then what would you say?
With 2, 3 lessons a week,
Mm,
they will finish like the beginner stage within 2 or 3 months because it's an easy one. We
mm,
and probably 2 3 months to have a good grasp in elementary level
mm,
and pre-intermediate level, when you can actually talk about a few things or more than a few things,
mm,
and you can in normal daily conversations, ordering food, buying stuff and stuff like that, you can do it quite well.
mm,
Yeah, it would take 6 months just to reach this level. Like you are on the threshold of being fluent in a language, and you can talk about normal things. 6 months is good. It's a good. It gives you a good start to be able to address yourself.
mm,
Later on, it would take more time because that is once you reach intermediate, the speed, the pace you had to learn a language is completely different. There are
mm.
different conditions now.
No, no.
It's not
But
as
then,
direct, as clear as beginning and pre-intermediate stage.
mm. But then the thing with that is, um, it's like that's where the never-ending journey starts. Because even if you
Mhm,
see people who have studied for 20 years, they're still learning new things. It depends what level you're at, but at least you'll get to a speaking level. Because
mhm,
you know how they say in playing sports, it's easy to get from beginner to intermediate,
mhm,
but then the mastery from
mhm.
intermediate to like mastery is like 20 years, like 10, 20 years from
Yes.
beginner to playing level. Like let's say if you're playing badminton or something, to picking up
Mhm,
the racket to being able to hold a rally is maybe a few weeks or less than that. But to play at professional level is like 10 years, right? 10 years of
mhm.
practice. So okay, there's that. So this is the positive for people listening, that 6 months of 3 lessons a week. Come on, it's not really that much, right? It's easier said than done, because I don't even
It's
think
not
I've
that
done.
intense.
Yeah,
It's not that intense as well.
yeah,
I'm giving you a lot of time to just relax, do other things. You have your own life. You can do a lot of things.
yes,
Just like maybe half an hour of practice and reviewing what you have studied every
yes,
day. Of course, people have different paces, but a normal person can reach a very good level in 6 months.
mm,
That enables them, because once you get to a certain level, there is no way back. You know, you
no,
have done a lot. You cannot just erase that or get rid of
no,
what you have done and stop. You don't stop by the momentum of your start.
yes, because that's what I've realized, that now, um, even if I don't do the lessons like I was, like recently, I've not been as active, maybe one lesson a week or something, right? The work that you've done, it doesn't go to waste, meaning I
Mhm,
have to revise the words, but now I just need to learn more words, and it comes
mhm,
with time. But I don't feel like I'm at the level where, when you're starting off and you're a complete beginner, where if you stop for a few weeks, it's like it feels almost like you're starting again. So now I feel like I'm out of that zone of, like, in the wilderness, where it's like
Mhm.
nothing's making sense, and you just everything's difficult. You're at a level where you can see, you're just hearing new words and things like that. So, okay, so, and then what qualities would you say is, when you get a new student
Mhm.
and someone wants to study with you, what
Mhm.
qualities do you look for in that student that makes you think, you know what, this person is going to kind of um, be successful in their journey?
Honestly, because I deal mostly with adults, it's quite easy.
Mm.
They deliberately come to me to learn Arabic.
They
So
already
I
have the
know,
motivation.
yes.
Mm.
Um, I think patience is very important when dealing with a language. You need to be patient. You have some target in your mind, but it cannot happen right away. It would take more
Mm.
time
No.
to achieve this kind of level, and you will achieve it, just matter of time.
Mm.
The second thing is you have to be smart dealing with the language. You have to know. You don't you don't get disappointed once. Yeah, I don't understand what you're saying. I watched a movie and I could just pick 2 3 words. That's okay. It's completely fine. You know a lot. One-to-one conversation is not as watching something, because watching something has a lot of distractions. You have to be smart. You have to give yourself some slack, to never criticize yourself and compare yourself with others. This is horrible. When you compare yourself with others, you don't know their circumstances,
Mm.
and it's unfair. And yeah, mostly patience. You are eager to learn the language.
Discipline.
Discipline. You
Mm.
have kind of uh, a short-term target. I'm
Mm.
a language learner myself,
No.
and I spent a year learning German with no target, with no aim at all, and it was not a success as I wanted.
Mm.
Once I put a target, I put a time frame, and I want
Mm.
to reach this level within this time frame, my productivity just skyrocketed. And the same with Arabic. Once you put a target, naturally you want to achieve it and attain it. Uh,
Motivates you, isn't it?
yeah, it motivates you. You,
And
you
is that
see
on
you
the,
see the
like,
light
Nam?
from the tunnel,
And is that
Mhm,
like, sometimes I try to speak, it's like that dopamine, when you
mhm,
have a goal, it kind of
mhm,
focuses you on, you feel good about achieving it, and you want to do more.
mhm,
And one other thing I would add to that is, um, also you might have to go through a few teachers to find which one is best for you, because
mhm,
sometimes the teacher might be the best, like this teacher might be seen as like a professor or something, but it depends on your styles and personality. You
mhm,
might not click. So there's no harm in having taste the lessons, seeing which one you feel comfortable with, going with that one.
mhm,
Sometimes I feel like, where people try to be too nice, like they've had a lesson with someone and then they don't want to disappoint them, so they're like,
uh-huh,
oh, I've got a lesson with, if they don't get on. And then the balance is to make it enjoyable. Like, I know when we have our lessons, maybe the lessons,
mhm,
because if you're of this mindset, like always trying to improve, you do think these things. And I feel like maybe the lessons could be maybe more effective if each week we had a topic, or each week we were like, oh, talking.
mhm,
But then that takes away from the compromise, is the enjoyment of the lesson. Because I know we can
mhm,
just talk, and we talk about daily life, and I know because life's always changing, the topics come up naturally anyway, you know so then it's like,
mhm,
you still get through the topics, but you're doing it in an enjoyable way, like a natural way.
mhm,
So you have to find,
Yes.
and then that way I don't feel, when I was starting off, yes, because you're struggling to speak anything, it was difficult. You have to have that energy. But after a while, I feel like,
Mhm,
oh, it's like just a conversation with a friend, you know, and there's less resistance.
mhm,
You don't need as much motivation. You can even do it maybe when you're tired, or you know. So that's something as well.
mhm.
And
Yes.
yeah, go ahead.
I want just to add, it's completely fine to try many teachers. It doesn't offend the teacher that you have a lesson with another teacher. It's
Yes.
completely normal, and you can learn from two or three teachers at the same time,
Mm,
because there is no one who would just give you 100% of what you need.
mm,
Any teacher has his drawbacks, has his advantages. Um, it's quite normal, and myself, with my experience, whenever I pick a teacher, I have really high criteria in my teacher, and that's why I tried many teachers.
what's
I
your
keep trying many
criteria?
teachers. I don't like the teacher who talks a lot about grammatical rule that spends 30 minutes just explaining to me. Because once I understand this grammatical rule and this kind of uh, things I need to do, I can learn more about it myself. So I'm during the lesson, I want to speak and practice the language
Mm,
80 to 70 to 80% of the whole time.
mm.
Uh, just
But I
give me
think
like,
I think you
study
have
about this, learn about this.
no. I think you have a unique insight because, mashallah, because you teach yourself, you see it from both sides. You can see it from the teaching lens, but also from the student lens. So I think, mashallah, that gives you a unique kind of insight. Whereas, say, if it's just a student, they're unsure. Sometimes you have to put the trust in the teacher as well. You know, if the teacher's telling you
Mhm,
about grammar, a lot of people, you know, the old school ways, like grammar, grammar, grammar. It's just like some people have like a, I don't know if they have like a, call it in English like a pet peeve, meaning like something that annoys them. You know, if someone doesn't get the grammar right, so they'll focus all the way on grammar. They might not ever
mhm,
get to speaking because that's just the way they've been brought up. That's just their way of doing it. And then for the student to say, no, I want to focus on speaking, they might feel lack of confidence because then the teacher's like, look, I've been studying, I've been teaching for 20 years. You're telling me how to
mhm,
teach. But then here's another benefit, Ustad, I wanted to get to this is another benefit of italki and online is the teachers, naturally, the good teachers, the ones that interact well with students, come to the top because
mhm,
italki, which is a website that you can use to find teachers to help you study languages that I can make a video on or I can link in the description, is review based to an extent. So
mhm,
it's like those teachers who have been proven to be most effective will rise to the top and they'll have good
mhm,
reviews. So it's a, what's the word? It's like a self-perpetuating
mhm,
feedback system. So that's the positive of it. Whereas before, I remember a few years ago, it was like you get a message on WhatsApp, or try this
mhm,
teacher, and then you try the teacher, and it's like you book a lesson, and there's no accountability, there's no nothing. Whereas with
mhm,
italki, the times are there, availability is there, the payments easily to do as well. I remember
mhm,
the first teacher that I studied with, they had to get payment through Western Union, and it
mm,
feels like
yeah.
1980s or something, where you had to go there. I had to find a branch that I've never been to, Western Union, and send them the money with these details. So everything's seamless, isn't it?
Mhm.
And
Yes. And
that's
secure as well.
Naam. And just to, um, I think we'll finish off.
Mhm,
Just to kind of conclude, I might ask you a few more questions. Is um, that's the benefit of the modern age. You know, we always talk about the harms of the modern age, and this has gone on for
mhm,
millennia. I think I was once hearing
mhm,
something that there's one of the oldest written statements or something that they found carved on a rock or something, and it said something about how the youth it said something about how now the youth are not how their parents were. So we're talking thousands of years ago,
Mm-hmm.
people had this thing where like they were always saying the youth is like this. And now you still find that now. People be like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, now the youth is like this in our time, this is constant. This has always gone
Mm-hmm.
on. So we always talk about the negatives of modern era, and there are negatives. But when you get the opportunity to see some positives, let's focus on that. The positives of the internet era is this. 10 years ago, I wouldn't be able to study with someone from Egypt like this. Okay, 10 years ago, maybe yes. But what I mean is it's a lot
Yeah.
less, it's a lot less common 20 years ago, let's
Mm-hmm.
say. The only way of learning would have been to find a teacher who I can study with physically or go to Egypt and, live there. So now it's at our fingertips, but then the lesson is Optimized Muslim podcast is like bridging the gap between the knowledge and doing it. Because look, we've learned now that access to information is nothing. Access to information doesn't really change application, because
Mm-hmm.
if you view it from the access to information stage, life hasn't really changed that much if you think about it. Because look, 50 years ago, arguably you had a lot of access because someone could just go to the library, like a
Mm-hmm.
big library. They can maybe find out anything, a lot of the things that you can find from the internet, they could maybe find from a book. It'll just take them longer. So you can still
Mm-hmm.
say, oh, you've got everything at your fingertips. It's just more time.
Mm-hmm.
Now the difference is the time's been cut from maybe 10 minutes looking through books in encyclopedia to a few seconds, but it doesn't change the application. So that's where we need to focus on. So my I'll leave the closing like remarks to you, but what I want to finish with, just in the spirit of the project, is if you're in that position, and I was as well. So, and everyone has their own blessings, everyone has their own struggles. So this isn't about, I don't want you to look at someone who's learning it or someone who can speak Arabic or and compare yourself negatively, right? Because look, one, you can always get there. Like we said, 6 months is not that much time, right? The only way you should feel negative is if you're comparing something that can't change. Growth mindset, optimized Muslim, is there's no negativity, there's no judgment if it's something that you can change. And the deen is all about changing anyway. So there's nothing to feel less
Mm-hmm.
than or, negative about, because you can take the action. The closing is you just need to take the action. You just need to take the first step and go through it, build a habit. I've got other videos on building habits. The same formula applies really. And then to make it easy for you, obviously I've invited my teacher. I'm going to link his details, and then you can find him. Do you have like an italki link like that goes straight to your
Yeah,
profile?
yeah, yeah. Yes.
Okay, so
I guess also
I'll put that in the
it's
description.
affiliating link, so it's an advantage.
Okay, I'll put that in the description. Not that this isn't like I don't think you're going to get thousands of people trying to book you, but
Mm-hmm.
if people want to book you, they can do that. And then, or if someone wants another teacher, they can look for them as well. What I'm trying to say is it's very easy, you know? What I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to say is the whole point of this is it's not one of them Neverland ideas. Oh, I want to learn Arabic. Let's just dream about it. Because that's what I used to do when I was at
Mm-hmm.
university. Now I think about how much time I had at university all the time. Whenever the topic came up, oh, I want to learn Arabic. Oh, I'm going, but then that changed. It went from I want to learn Arabic to I'm going to learn Arabic. And then people were like, well, why don't you do it? We all go through that phase. Next step is for
Mm-hmm.
you to just take action. So that's what I wanted to close with, and then I wanted to just give it over to you for your final comments and advice and whatever comes to your mind, inshallah.
I want to say there is never a perfect time for something to do. That's in life. That applies in life in general. I remember as a student, I say, "Ah, I'm gonna study at 9 sharp," as if it's like 8:55 is a bad idea to start.
Mm,
The most important thing is you start. It's never perfect to start timing for starting. Once you start, you are in the process. You would learn by any means. You can just come across a word in a book. You can hear it from someone. But the idea of learning a language is the accumulation. You have to accumulate a lot of things to be able to speak it. Uh, it's now easy. It's now easy to reach out a teacher and have lessons. And if you don't like him or her, you can go to another teacher and find what suits you best. Resources in Arabic, it's as plenty as in other languages, but they exist. You just need to be smart to choose what fits you. Not every resource. There's nothing. There's no resource that can work with others. You can find something is boring. Don't do it. If it's boring, if it takes a lot of time, just get rid of it. You will learn from a different way, from a different perspective. And I said the beginning stage of any language is kind of boring because you cannot have much fun in the beginning. It's all about learning, trying to practice stuff. But it's just a phase. Once you have an adequate level to practice a language, you can have fun with it. Because
You get the
language
feedback.
it's just a tool. You tailor what you want to do, you know. You can read your perfect book translated in Arabic if you want that. You can have a fruitful conversation with someone in Arabic. What you do in your own native language, what you have fun in your native language, just apply it to Arabic. You need to, of course, to suffer from boredom a bit at the beginning. It's quite normal, but it's just a phase. Remember, it's just a phase. Soon, you will be able to not feel you are learning a language as something you force yourself to do. You will just do what you like in a different language. So, yeah,
Very
that's
good.
what I want to say. Do it. It's really fun to learn a language. It's quite
Once you get past that
impressive
phase.
because if you speak one language, yes, exactly, and it's impressive. And after learning a second language, third language becomes easier because you understand yourself.
You can learn.
Self-understanding, to know your capabilities, what you are good at, what you are not that good at. Self-awareness is a key for anything, especially a language.
And you know the process that works for you. You get to see language learning as a process. So you know, say if I was to want to learn Turkish, for example, I wouldn't spend 2 years trying to learn from a textbook on my own, which sounds very silly now that I say it like that. But I'd go straight to learning the basics, get a tutor. Because look, anything in life, the path is generally the same. It's like get a teacher, get feedback. Instant feedback is probably the best because it helps you correct. Make mistakes, consistency. Learn. It's like the same process that can be broken down for anything. But Jazakallah khair for your time. And
You're welcome.
just wanted to say thank you for coming on to the podcast. And I know you this is a bit different for you. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you coming on, and mashallah, you explained everything really good. And also, like I said, I'll put your details on. People can see what you're like, but alhamdulillah, it's very good to study with you, someone like you, someone who's young and you can speak to like as a friend, as a counselor, and just discuss different things in life. And you learn the language, but you also enjoy time as well. So, Jazakallah khairan. And I'm sure a lot of people benefited from that. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam.